all of a sudden the whole world gets captivated by what is happening in humanoid robotics, and they immediately associate humanoid robotics with Tesla, and it just gets to be this topic that snowballs in everyone's mind as wow, like this is incredible. What's happening is unstoppable.
We're going to talk about Tesla stock. When will Tesla stock jump? Because people realize that humanoid bots is a real thing. And this Chris Camillo is well known as the person who kind of has a good sense of what's going on with social media and what's going on with the community. And he watches that carefully. And when he sees that the public is starting to realize a particular stock is about to jump, that's when he gets in, and he's been timing it correctly. So let's watch this first. It's going to triple. He thinks that the Tesla will triple at some point, but he's not concerned being a little late.
It's necessarily just one video, and now all of a sudden the world is going to start factoring in Optimus into Tesla's valuation. I think it's a series of events, a series of videos, of conversations, of multiple humanoid companies, including Tesla. I just have to figure out when it starts to snowball. And towards the beginning of that snowball is when I'll put the trade on. Now, you could make an argument that we are in the beginning stages already. In fact, the volume of humanoid discussion that's happening on X and other online communities and in just the general news is up like 5x over the past, what would you say, 2 weeks? So it's kind of like when a big earthquake comes, sometimes before the big quake, you start to see some kind of smaller quakes happening in the region, and that could be a signal of the big quake. I feel like that's where we are right now. I'm prepared to be super quick. And I already told everyone I'm willing, like if Tesla pops 5 or 10% on something, but I believe that that marks the beginning of the true information dissemination driving event that starts the Optimus run, I would be happy to place my trade after a 10% bump in Tesla. That doesn't concern me at all, because what I believe Optimus will ultimately do to Tesla is doubling, tripling the stock over some period of time. So I'm not concerned with being a tiny bit late.
Okay, so it's interesting. He also had a previous video where he said that initially he really just cared more about humanoid. He's watching for humanoid bot, specifically Tesla. And then he's going to throw in a big amount of money to invest. Then he said that, oh, but FSD has already started and we already saw the pop because of FSD excitement. And now he said he was forced to actually invest already ahead of time. So now he's talking about humanoid, but he said 5 to 10% bump. We're seeing 5 to 10% bump sometimes on a daily basis. So I'm not sure. What's your interpretation of everything he said there?
Well, first of all, I just have to say that I love Chris. He's an awesome investor. He's got an awesome framework for thinking about what he does. You and I have both gotten to speak with him personally, and he's also just an awesome guy. So to understand his commentary, I think you have to understand a little bit about the way that he thinks about these investment opportunities. And what he really likes to do is what he has called social arbitrage investing, where what you're trying to figure out is you're trying to minimize the number of variables that are at play in an investment thesis. You're trying to say, hey, what is the one thing that is going to drive a public shift in understanding of a story in a big way that other people don't see yet, but they're about to see. And so he wants to find, it's not necessarily about fundamental performance. It's not necessarily about specific events. It's always about public perception of a thing and trying to figure out when it's going to take off. And so one of the early things that he did that really cemented his expertise in this area was he developed a company that was called Ticker Tags back in the early 2000s. And it was really focused on monitoring social mentions with a whole bunch of keywords of specific stocks and using this information about how stocks are being discussed on, it was Twitter at the time, to be like the thing that generated research candidates for him to look into, and then to actually go and invest in. He eventually sold that company to someone on Wall Street. and they have not really used it to its full potential. And so that's what he's thinking about here is he wants to invest in the robot opportunity, the Optimus humanoid robot opportunity, because the TAM for what Optimus robot can provide to the economy is just much larger than FSD. FSD is big, it's important, it's also hard, and there's a lot of risk that goes along with that that's related to regulations, and all of those question marks about regulations and like the feasibility of accomplishing the software make it a lot harder to pinpoint, is there a moment in time where over 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, or a year that the market goes from saying this is worth 0 to Tesla and wow, now like the entire valuation is driven by this one thing. And so because of that risk, it makes FSD a harder thing for him to want to invest in. And he really doesn't want any of that to muddy his investment thesis for the Optimus humanoid robot. And so what he would like in an ideal world is for there just to be this sustained, what he calls an information dissemination trend, where it's just like all of a sudden the whole world gets captivated by what is happening in humanoid robotics, and they immediately associate humanoid robotics with Tesla, and it just gets to be this topic that snowballs in everyone's mind as wow, like this is incredible, what's happening is unstoppable. And the more that essentially meme in the minds of the general public takes hold, the more that will then drive back to people investing in the name, which will drive performance. And so that's what he's trying to figure out is, when is that run really going to start? And he wants to get in early on that run. He wants to be sure that it has started. So that's why he's willing to wait, for that 10% pop that is specifically attributable to Optimus, not to other factors. And it's got to be on something that he knows, like this is the beginning of the Optimus news avalanche that will take place. Once he sees that, that's when he wants to go all in. And he wants to go all in with the reason that he wants to isolate all those variables is because then he goes in with high amounts of leverage. He wants to make a bet that's 20x levered. And when you try to make a bet that's 20x levered, like the likelihood that you're going to fail is high. And so that's where trying to manage all these extra risks and minimize them as much as possible becomes really important. And that's how he has managed to, like, I think he's averaged over 70% compound annual growth returns. It's like basically doubling every year. The way that he's been able to manage that is by making these huge bets where he has super high asymmetric upside and he really, really limits the downside risk. And it's a very difficult thing to do, but it's something that he is very good at.
Very good explanation. Appreciate that so much, Hans, of exactly how he approaches it. So first of all, like you said, he's high risk. He will put in a lot of money and he'll play leaps and big bets like this. And so he's trying to time it. And he personally is much more sophisticated than many of us. So for us, we should just stick with buying the company if you think that they're eventually going to solve this and you can't time it. But so what I wanted to ask you is, you do agree with his statement that we've not seen a 10% pop in the stock because of the bot? It's all been FSD. It's all been the election.
Well, I don't know if it's possible that we've seen, I would say it's probably not likely. I would actually agree that we haven't seen a 10% bot or jump that is specifically due to the Optimus. But even if the other part of what he said was the 10% pop, that looks like it is the beginning of that public perception shift, which there could be something that you see that comes along where it does look like the stock pops 10% on Optimus news. But for whatever reason, you don't think that that specific piece of Optimus news is enough to get the snowball rolling. And so that's, the second piece. It's not just any 10% bump because of Optimus. It is a 10% bump because of Optimus that looks like
is about to
is
go
going
to
public. Yes.
Public perception. All right. Well, then I want to show you a few things. And you've been watching this closely, you and I, and I'm sure many of our audience members. But the public, the general public, are they going to start to realize that this is a big deal? So you've got, at conferences like CES, we continue to see bots everywhere now, and they're interacting with humans. Here's an example of one where, he's shaking hands, walking around, interacting with humans, right?
Yeah, I think he's controlling. Give me a high five.
And then later in the segment, we'll talk about when you can actually talk to these bots, and they're going to talk to you, specifically Tesla. But more and more, we're watching humanoids walking around in public and interacting with humans. This is just the beginning. This is a tech conference, so obviously that is something that we can realize it's only the tech elite that have seen this. But eventually, this will go and be more public, right? Now, this bot is very likely teleoperated. There's a human there that's telling it where to walk, what to do, shake hands, all that. So it's people, when they watch this, they think it's not being teleoperated, but it is. Eventually, it won't be. It's going to come very, very soon. This is just the way to train it so that it knows how to do these things. But look at this. There is this, this is now, I actually don't know if this is real. I think it's real. I haven't validated if it is, but take a look at what's happening here.
Gente do céu, falando em BO, olha isso.
In public.
Não tem nada a ver com BO, mas olha isso, Bernardo.
Robot walking a robot dog.
Passeando com um cachorro.
Yeah, these Unitree
Essa
robots are getting to be very impressive from a mechanical standpoint. And the dog there is Unitree's version of the Boston Dynamics Spot robot. And we've seen some amazing capabilities out of that. And they're using, kind of the similar technology that they're using in that Spot robot for their humanoid form factor. And the quality of their software also looks like it's, pretty impressive. We've seen a lot of things, I think that for them, the manufacturing scale is the thing that they're working on, and then quality. One of the limiting factors, it's going to be a big bottleneck, I think, for a lot of humanoid robotics companies for sale. If they want to make money on their robots, it's not only do they have to have those capabilities, and then they have to have their capabilities be autonomous, but then their robots also have to actually be robust, and they need to work for years at a time. And so that's one of the big questions that I have around Unitree. This is a little bit of an aside, is just because we can see these robots do these amazing things, after you see one of those Spot robot video demonstrations, where the one where it had the wheels and it was jumping all over the place and going down mountains and doing all kinds of acrobatics and stuff, like that's really cool that it can do that. The question is, after it does that demonstration one time, are the actuators shot? Like, does it take a lot of refurbishment? Could it do that for, a month? Could it do that for 6 months? Could it do it for a year? How much abuse can it take before the body of the robot is shot? Because, if you're wearing out your hardware super fast, then all of a sudden the investment thesis for, buying these and putting these in your warehouse, if you have to replace them or they take tons of maintenance, that doesn't work out from a business and an economical standpoint. And that's one of the things that Tesla's obviously going to be working very hard on as well. Like Optimus, we don't know that Optimus has solved this problem either. That's really, I think, one of the big, just from watching AI advance so rapidly over the last year and seeing the incredible developments that are happening even right now that we'll kind of get into. I think the intelligence piece, like there's engineering work that it takes to put that intelligence into these robot form factors, but actually having robust physical bodies that can not only move the way that humans move and do useful work the way that humans do it, but also for all of the parts that support it being able to do that, being able to last for thousands and thousands and thousands of hours. That's really going to be one of the big challenges. And I think that's one of the areas where Tesla has an advantage in just their overall first principles thinking, their full vertical integration, in being able to get to the best solution to that problem quicker than anyone else. And that being the key bottleneck that is going to define who is the most successful of the humanoid robotic companies.
Yeah. I interviewed a CEO, I won't mention anymore, but just of a robotics company last year. And he told me that the actuator breaks every 6 months. This was last year. It was one of these major companies out there. So that is, you're right, the biggest issue. So we're going to see, regardless, we're going to see demos of this everywhere. We already starting to see it. More and more are going to go public now, because the year before, last year, we started seeing, just quick snippets of videos that they're sharing. Now you're going to see them in public, in interaction. That's happening. And here's another example here, where just reported now that there's going to be a half marathon in Beijing this April. And they're going to have 20 Chinese companies are going to have their humanoid robots run alongside 12,000 humans. Okay. So the first time, dozens of humanoid robots, well, how come dozens? Yeah, I guess dozens, so over 20, are expected to join a half marathon. This comes as China ramps up efforts to develop artificial intelligence robotics. So not only are they, why would they do this? Because they want to be seen as China having dozens of humanoid robots in this marathon, right? To show them that this is a real deal. Since some 12...
It's also a very difficult, technical challenge for a humanoid
to make them
robot
run.
to running period is hard, much less running long distance. So that probably a lot of those robots are not going to finish that half marathon even.
Yeah. They're not going to finish. It's more of a demo, I think.
Yeah. But just having them there and, getting it's one of those things that is it's a game that forces you to push the envelope of technology, just like F1 is a game that pushes the technological development
to compete with each other.
Cars.
Yeah.
Yes. And so that's what that is. And it's a great way to do that and to really, get some real world testing. And it's almost the other thing that I would, for actual tech nerds, I would say this is kind of like the DARPA challenge of, self-driving cars back in the early 2000s for humanoid robots being able to actually move over long distances for long periods of time with endurance, which is one of the key features of humans.
Yeah. By April, you are one of these 20 plus vendors. You got to get your bot out there. It's going to be in public. You're going to be shown against other bots. And so you want to show up in the top 5, top 10 so that you can say, hey, get me more money. This is a big deal. But imagine what's going to happen when they do this. The entire China will see this. Maybe in the entire world, we'll watch this video, because it could be quite kind of a sight, right? 20 plus bots all running, even if they're really slow, but you can just see them and you can compare them and you can go, they're again in public. It can happen at any moment. I think this kind of realization by the conversations by humans who are investors looking, oh my God, we're here.